Imagine waking up in a world shaped by kingdoms you've never heard of. Their names erased, their palaces buried, yet their influence echoes in your daily life. We remember Rome, Egypt, China. But what about the empires that vanished from textbooks, yet still changed the course of world history? Today, we're unearthing the secrets of lost kingdoms that rewrote the rules, only to fade into shadow. The question isn't just what these hidden empires were, but how the world would look if they had never existed. And why, after all they did, were they forgotten? Let's start with the kingdom of Aksum. Have you ever wondered how coffee, Christianity in Africa, or even the word, Candace, made their way into history? In the shadow of the Nile, Aksum rose as a powerhouse of trade around the 1st century CE, linking Rome, India, Arabia, and beyond. Their coins were the first in the world to use the cross centuries before European kingdoms. They minted gold that traveled from African markets to Mediterranean bazaars. And their king, Ezana, became one of the first monarchs anywhere to convert to Christianity, setting the stage for an African Christian tradition that outlasted even the Caesars. But Aksum's greatest secret might be its role in preserving the Ark of the Covenant. According to Ethiopian legend, the Ark was brought here by Menelik, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Is it true? Historians can't agree, but for nearly 2,000 years, Aksum's priests have guarded a mysterious relic in their cathedral, forbidden to all outsiders. Even Indiana Jones would be jealous. Yet, despite its glory, Aksum faded. Climate change, overfarming, and shifting trade routes left its monumental obelisk standing lonely in the highlands. Today, Aksum is rarely mentioned in classrooms, but without it, the history of Christianity, trade, and even diplomacy between Africa and Eurasia would look completely different. If we sail east, we find the Srivijaya Empire, a name that sounds almost mythical, but whose ships ruled the waves of Southeast Asia for over 600 years. Picture this. It's the year 900, and the narrow straits between Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula are choked not by pirates, but by Srivijaya's merchant fleets. Gold, spices, and ideas flowed through these waters, controlled by a Buddhist monarchy that welcomed scholars from as far as India and China. Srivijaya was the Silicon Valley of its day, a hub for innovation, culture, and technology. Buddhist monks from China, like Yijing, stop here to study Sanskrit and collect scriptures before heading to Nalanda. The empire's capital, Palembang, was a melting pot where travelers could hear a dozen languages in a single marketplace. Why don't we hear about Srivijaya? Maybe because its power was built on water, not walls. When rival kingdoms and pirates finally broke its hold, the jungle and the tides reclaimed its cities. But the spread of Buddhism across Indonesia, the rise of maritime trade in Asia, and even the shape of modern shipping lanes owe a debt to Srivijaya's lost navy. Further north, let's dive into the world of the Hittites. For centuries, historians thought the Hittites were just a rumor. The Bible mentioned them, but outside that, nothing, until a German archaeologist stumbled on thousands of clay tablets in central Turkey. Suddenly, a forgotten superpower came roaring back to life. At their height, the Hittites ruled an empire that stretched from the Aegean to Syria, rivaling Egypt and Babylon. Here's the twist. The world's first recorded peace treaty was signed between the Hittites and the Egyptians after the epic Battle of Kadesh. Forget Game of Thrones. The real drama was here, with spies, betrayals, and chariots thundering across the plains. The treaty was so important that a replica hangs in the United Nations headquarters today. But the Hittites gave us more than diplomacy. They were among the first to smelt iron, sparking an arms race that would change warfare forever. When their empire collapsed around 1200 BCE, their secrets of ironworking spread with their refugees, setting the stage for the Iron Age and everything that came after. Without the Hittites, would the sword have replaced the spear? Would empires have risen so quickly, or fallen so hard? Let's cross the Mediterranean to the land of Tartessos. If you've never heard of Tartessos, you're not alone. It's a name shrouded in legend, sometimes called the Atlantis of Spain. Greek and Roman writers described it as a fabulously wealthy city at the mouth of the Guadalquivir River, where silver was so abundant it was used for ordinary utensils. But who were the Tartessians? Archaeologists have uncovered vast hoards of gold, intricate jewelry, and mysterious inscriptions in a language no one can read. Their contact with Phoenician traders brought writing, metallurgy, and new crops to Western Europe. The Tartessians may have even inspired elements of the Atlantis myth, an advanced civilization swallowed by disaster. Then, around 500 BCE, Tartessos vanished. Was it destroyed by Carthaginians? Struck by natural disaster? Or did it simply melt into the cultures that followed? The riches of Tartessos fueled the rise of Iberian tribes, and its hybrid culture became the blueprint for later Spanish civilization. Every time you see silver jewelry or read about the Age of Exploration, you're glimpsing the legacy of a kingdom that officially never existed. Now, let's go south to the Kingdom of Kush. When people think of pyramids, they think of Egypt, but did you know there are more pyramids in Sudan than in Egypt? That's thanks to the Kushites, who built a black pharaoh's dynasty that conquered Egypt itself. For almost a century, Kushite kings ruled as the 25th dynasty, uniting the Nile Valley from Khartoum to the Mediterranean. The Kushites didn't just copy Egypt, they reimagined it. Their queens, known as Kandakis or Candaces, led armies and negotiated with Rome. Their art fused African and Egyptian styles, and their religion sent the worship of Amun thundering deep into the savannah. When Assyria finally drove them from Egypt, the Kushites rebuilt in their capital, Meroe, turning it into a center of iron production and trade. Their script, Meroitic, is still undeciphered, a lost language that could rewrite what we know about ancient Africa. But why don't we learn about Kush? Maybe because history is often written by the victors, and Egypt's conquerors were eager to erase the memory of their foreign rulers. Yet without Kush, the story of Egypt, Rome, and Africa itself would be unrecognizable. The echoes of this lost kingdom ring in everything from ancient architecture to modern African pride. Across the Atlantic, let's talk about the Mississippian culture. Before Columbus set sail, cities like Cahokia towered above the Mississippi River, with earthen mounds bigger than Egypt's pyramids. At its peak, Cahokia may have been home to 20,000 people, a metropolis larger than London or Paris at the time. The Mississippians built vast trade networks, stretching from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Their artwork, carved shells, copper plates, and effigies, suggests a complex society with astronomy, religion, and social hierarchy. But around 1350, Cahokia was abandoned. Drought? War? Disease? No one knows for sure. What's clear is that the memory of these mound builders faded fast, erased by the myth that North America was empty before Europeans arrived. But if you visit the American Midwest today, you'll find their legacy in the land itself. The city plans, the road networks, even the traditions of later native nations, all bear the fingerprints of a lost civilization that challenged everything we thought we knew about pre-Columbian America. Let's fly east again, this time to the Khmer Empire. The word Angkor conjures images of crumbling towers swallowed by jungle. But 1,000 years ago, this was the beating heart of Southeast Asia. A megacity with 1 million inhabitants, more than medieval Paris or London. The Khmer mastered water like no one else. Their engineers dug canals, built reservoirs the size of lakes, and turned swamps into rice paddies that fed an empire. Angkor Wat, the world's largest religious monument, was just one jewel in their crown. The Khmer wrote poetry, debated philosophy, and sent diplomats as far as China and India. But their downfall came not from invasion, but from climate. A series of devastating droughts and floods shattered their infrastructure. As the jungle closed in, the Khmer faded from memory, until French explorers stumbled on their temples in the 19th century. Now, scientists use lidar and satellite imagery to map the lost city beneath the trees, revealing that Angkor was even bigger and more complex than anyone imagined. The Khmer's legacy lives on in the region's art, religion, and even language. Every time you see a lotus flower, a bas-relief, or a Buddhist stupa in Southeast Asia, you're seeing the ghost of a kingdom that refused to die. Now, let's head to Central Asia, where the Sogdian city-states once turned the Silk Road into a superhighway of ideas. Ever heard of Samarkand or Bukhara? These cities were crossroads, connecting China, Persia, India, and Byzantium. But it was the Sogdians, a merchant people almost forgotten by history, who made the Silk Road work. Sogdian traders spoke many languages, brokered peace between empires, and even spread Buddhism to China. Their letters, buried in desert sands, reveal a world where a message could travel from Rome to Xi'an, changing hands a dozen times, but never losing its meaning. The Sogdians gave us paper, silk, spices, and stories. When the Mongols swept through, the city-states crumbled, but their legacy lived on in the cultures they connected. Without the Sogdians, would Marco Polo have found his way to China? Would Buddhism have reached Japan? The invisible threads of their influence still bind East and West today. Let's turn to the Chachapoya, the cloud people of the Andes. Before the Inca, these warriors built cities on sheer cliffs, surrounded by swirling mists. Their fortress of Kulap rivaled Machu Picchu in scale, with walls so thick they defied all attackers. The Chachapoya mummified their dead, painted their faces with mysterious symbols, and left behind tombs perched on impossible ledges. When the Inca arrived, they both feared and respected the cloud people. Some Chachapoya fought to the death. Others allied with the Spanish conquistadors, hoping to regain their freedom. In the end, disease and warfare erased them, but their ruins still haunt the highlands of Peru. So why do these lost kingdoms matter? Because every forgotten empire changes the way we see ourselves. The foods we eat, the languages we speak, the religions we follow, even the borders of our countries. So much comes from civilizations we barely remember. Every time we unearth a coin, decipher a script, or rebuild a ruined city, we're piecing together a puzzle that's been scattered for centuries. And here's the kicker. There are still lost kingdoms out there, waiting to be discovered. Every year, archaeologists find new evidence of cities swallowed by jungle, desert, or sea. Ancient DNA reveals migrations and alliances no one saw coming. The story of lost empires isn't over. It's just waiting for the next chapter. So, what if we could bring these kingdoms back into our shared story? What would we learn, not just about them, but about ourselves? History isn't just about kings and battles. It's about the invisible threads that tie us together, across continents and centuries. If you love stories like these, of forgotten empires, lost inventions, and ancient mysteries, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to History Owl for more journeys into the hidden corners of the past. Who knows what lost kingdom we'll uncover next? Until then, keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and remember, sometimes the greatest powers are the ones history tried to erase.